What's up guys, I'm BTC. Today I'm going to introduce you to the brand new hero concept, the Phasing Commando Mikhail. Right now, Overwatch needs more tanks and healers in-game, but that's something that Blizzard needs to take care of. And they only release 3 heroes a year, but I can release hero concepts way faster than that. And I don't want to restrict myself to only tanks and healers. So today is the first of my DPS hero concepts. Now, if this is the first time you've seen one of my hero concepts, I don't just haphazardly throw stuff together, and I don't put overpowered stuff onto a character simply because I think it's cool. I spend hours upon hours going over every single detail of the character. Here's just a little glimpse behind the scenes of some of the data work that I do in order to find the exact numbers for everything I want the character to have. My goal is to create a character that could seamlessly be put right into the game. Quick thank you to X-SEIDE-T, he's the artist who helps me make these concepts. His link is down below, you can go and check out some more of his awesome content. If you have any questions about the character, make sure to leave them in the comment section down below. I'll be answering them in a follow-up video tomorrow, and once that video goes live, I'll put that link in the description of this video as well. Also, if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you hit the like button and share it. It helps a lot. Let's get started. There are a few different methods for creating a hero. For this one, I went with creating an interesting ability and build the hero around that. In the case of Mikhail, it was phasing type abilities. So for the goals, the first is create a hero based around phasing abilities. The second is the ultimate must reward higher skill. This means that you can't just press Q and suddenly do massive amounts of damage. The player is going to need to have a lot more control of the character in order to do that damage. And the third is to kind of invent a new type of flanking option for the character that kind of goes along with the phasing abilities. During the first Omnic Crisis, only one region in the world was able to defeat the Omnics without the aid of Overwatch. In the harsh, frozen land of Siberia, the Russian Defense Forces defeated the Omnics and deactivated the Siberian Omnium. The victory was largely due to the gigantic piloted mechs known as Svetogor. These colossal machines are well equipped to do battle and defend the cities, but where the mech strategy fails utterly is infiltration and intelligence gathering on their Omnic enemy. Throughout the first and second Omnic Crisis, a variety of methods were employed and each met with failure. Smaller drones were easily hacked or destroyed by the Omnics. Human scouts were quickly discovered as the Omnics utilized a webwork of infrared sensors. The looming danger of new and unknown Omnic technology was a major concern. A solution presented itself when Overwatch revealed the existence of an experimental teleporting aircraft known as Slipstream. While the exact workings of this aircraft were a tightly guarded secret, the aircraft itself was promoted throughout the world media to an embarrassingly disastrous effect. During the flight test of the Slipstream, a malfunction caused the aircraft to vanish, and although the pilot was later recovered, the Slipstream was considered a total failure. Overwatch had never directly aided the RDF during the first Omnic Crisis, but the test flight of the Slipstream, along with some stolen documentation, provided Russian scientists with the answer to a long-standing problem. A series of experiments began trying to recreate the teleportation matrix used in the Slipstream, but all met with failure. The scientists decided to try a different approach. Rather than trying to move matter through space, they would use gravitons to move space around matter. Graviton technology had already made significant advancements in weapons and shielding, but what if it could also be used to create miniature wormholes? The strategy was changed from trying to transport an entire vehicle to simply relocating a single person. The RDF requested volunteers from soldiers in the most elite combat groups. At first, the results were not very promising, as side effects of the graviton infusion often caused irreparable damage, including mutilation, madness, and death. Again and again, the tests were met with failure, until test subject 7461, also known as Captain Mikhail Fedonov. Stepping into the chamber and preparing to be bombarded with graviton particles, Mikhail knew the chance of success was slim at best, but he was determined to do whatever was necessary to defeat the Omnics and win the war. Shortly after the test began, scientists were sent into panic as Omnics began attacking the facility. The carefully calibrated stream of graviton particles were sent into chaos as the building's power spiked and fell rapidly. Instead of receiving a small constant stream of graviton particles, Mikhail's body was subjected to extreme bursts for several minutes as scientists struggled to shut down the test chamber. After a short battle, the Omnics had been defeated, power was properly restored to the building, and the graviton particles had stopped. The scientists feared what sort of horrific sight they may find in the chamber. However, upon opening the door, they saw not one, but multiple phased versions of Mikhail, all seemingly occupying the same space. The gravitons had torn open more than just the fabric of space, and pulled versions of Mikhail from other worlds that now existed here in a partially phased form. Test subject 7461 was considered a success. One of the more requested attack types is a 3-round burst hit scan. Blizzard has said that they would like to include this in a hero at some point, but they're not sure how to do it. This is my version. Mikhail's burst rifle. Type, burst hit scan, damage is 13 per hit, rate of fire is effectively 1 per 0.8 seconds. Not exactly that though, more on that later. Spread angle is 1.15 fixed, ammo is 30, reload time is standard 1.5 seconds, burst pattern is a 3-round burst with a small delay between bursts. Most characters in the game that have a sustained attack will have something called a spread angle, and this means the longer you hold down the attack, the more off-center your attacks become. So for a lot of characters, it starts right dead center, and then it begins to slowly move outward. The way a burst weapon generally works is you have 3 rapid hits with a small delay, followed by 3 rapid hits. The problem is you can't make those 3 rapid hits be perfectly accurate, because if you do, they'll be incredibly powerful at long range. And the idea is for Mikhail to be more of a flanker, to be more of a close and medium range type attack hero, as opposed to just sitting way in the back. In order to get all of this balanced, I had to give his burst attack a fixed spread, which means every time you attack, there will always be at least a little bit off center. And that's because of the nature of having it uncontrolled while it's bursting. This means at close range you can do a lot of damage because the spread angle doesn't matter, but the further and further back you get, the more that spread angle is going to impact it, and it's going to cause you to miss shots to the point where when you're at long range, you might as well not even attack because chances are you're going to end up missing. Mikhail's first ability is the Phase Dash. He throws out a phased copy of himself that charges straight ahead, dealing damage to any enemy it touches, and then Mikhail can use it to swap positions later on. The type is a projectile, the type effect is piercing, damage is 70, projectile speed is 28 meters per second, duration is 6 seconds, cooldown is 5 seconds, and I know that looks a little weird, I'll explain it in a second. The second use is swap position with the phase copy and destroy it, and when you swap position, it also gives you a cleanse. So a couple of things. First, it's a special kind of projectile. So it's like the translocator that Sombra throws, where it can't be deflected and it can't be defense matrix. There's nothing that you can do except get out of its way. And the speed that it goes is 28 meters per second, which is a tiny bit faster than a fire strike, so it's not exactly difficult for the enemy to get out of the way. If they see it coming, they can step to the side and move it, so that's not really that big of a deal. And the damage will be 70 for every enemy it passes through. Let me explain the movement mechanics of the phase copy. For comparison, when Ashe summons Bob, he appears above her, drops down, and runs forward. He'll keep going until he hits an enemy or wall, at which point he stops, turns around, and starts attacking. How the phase copy works is it appears exactly where Mikhail is standing, and then runs out forward. However, it doesn't stop when it hits an enemy, it just keeps going through all of them. The only way it stops is if it hits a wall, at which point it will turn around. And the reason why it turns around is because you don't want to be staring into a wall if you swap to it. Now let's talk duration cooldown, because I know that looks a little weird. The duration is 6 seconds, the cooldown is 5 seconds, but it doesn't start until after the phase copy is gone. So that can happen in one of two ways. Either duration expires, or you swap to the phase copy and destroy it. There's a couple of different strategies with it. You can throw out the phase copy and let it sit there, and then swap to it when you're in danger, or you can just swap to it right away and use it to reposition yourself to continue the attack, and also start the cooldown faster. But more often than not, you're probably going to swap to it quickly because that leads into the next ability. Unstable energy allows Mikhail to release a burst of energy that damages all nearby enemies. The type is player-based area of effect, damage is 80, area effect range is 5 meters, and the cooldown is 8 seconds. There's really not too much to talk about here. You just use the ability and it does a very quick burst of energy and it deals damage to anything that happens to be near you. Combining this with the phase dash can be a very effective combo on an unsuspecting enemy. Throw the phase copy to them, swap to it, and then immediately unstable energy, and it does a decent amount of damage. It's not going to be able to instantly take them out, but it still does quite a bit. The only issue is that they're going to be able to see the phase copy coming towards them, because it's kind of like a fire strike. So they'll know it's coming and they can move out of the way. The trick then is to play mind games with the enemy. You don't want to do the combo every single time, because they're going to see it coming, they're going to expect it, and then you're going to have a bad time. His next ability is a passive called Displacement. This is the first ability that I thought of when designing the character, and I built everything else around this. The cooldown is 10 seconds, the cooldown during ultimate is 1 second, and the effect is that Mikhail entirely avoids a single attack. This can be very powerful if you're avoiding an attack from a Junkrat or a Pharah, but it's very weak if you're avoiding an attack from a Tracer or a Sombra. So who your enemy is determines how effective this ability can be. Originally, I thought about just making it a sort of evasion where you have a % chance to avoid an enemy, but I really didn't like that. RNG type stuff is the absolute worst in any FPS or any competitive game at all. You don't want RNG. It just causes a lot of problems. So the solution I came up with was to just put it on a cooldown, and it's automatically activated every single time it's available. And now we move on to the ultimate. Recently, Blizzard devs have talked about toning down future hero ultimates. They don't want them to be this massive team fight swinging type thing. Instead, they want it to have a more narrow focus. And that's kind of how I designed Duplicate. Mikhail will create a phased copy of himself that will fight alongside him. The type is a self-buff, the clone damage is 60% of whatever Mikhail is doing, the duration is 8 seconds, charge requirement is 1600, and the effect is creates a phase copy that mimics Mikhail's movements, attacks, and abilities. It will instantly reload the ammo when you activate the ability, and all cooldowns are reset, and displacement cooldown is changed to 1 second. To clarify, the phase copy occupies the exact same space as Mikhail does. I know the image artwork has him a little to the side, but in-game, the phase copy would occupy the exact same space as Mikhail, and that's for two very important reasons. The first is movement. If the phase copy is to the side or behind you, and you try to go through a hallway or you jump over stuff, it's just going to cause all kinds of movement issues that I just didn't want to deal with. But the second and more important thing is the phase copy needs to be aiming at the exact same spot that you're aiming at. So wherever your crosshair is, that's where the phase copy crosshair also needs to be. For the damage aspect of this, Mikhail is effectively getting a 60% damage buff, but it's not exactly like that, because the phase copy does 60% of whatever Mikhail is doing. So if Mikhail gets an extra damage buff from something else like a nano, then the phase copy damage also gets increased by a certain amount, and that includes ability damage in addition to the normal attacks. But keep in mind, Mikhail and the phase copy are considered two separate sources of damage, so if there's any damage reduction on the other end from armor or something else, it's going to be reduced twice instead of once. Now, I know some are going to bring up the big scary 60% number thinking that it's way too big, but compared to other ultimates, the damage potential of Duplicate is right about on par with some of the others. Trust me, I did the math on it. And I know if you nano boost him when he's using Duplicate, that's going to be a massive amount of damage, but the thing is, if you nano boost a Pharah, a Reaper, or a Genji, it's the same thing. As for the duration being 8 seconds, it actually follows the rules of damaging ultimates in Overwatch. That being, the more control you have of your character during the ultimate, the longer the duration is. For example, Reaper and Pharah, you press Q, you do a massive amount of damage, you have almost no control of your character. For Soldier and Genji, it lasts for 6 seconds and you have to move your character around, but you get a massive transformation in the type of the attack you get. Either it's full lock-on or the massive area effect of that Dragon Sword. On the other hand, stuff that just gives you a raw damage increase like Nano and Supercharger lasts for a lot longer. Nano is 8 seconds, Supercharger is 15 seconds. So the closest thing that Duplicate is like in the game would be Nano Boost, except instead of using it on a teammate, you use it on yourself. As a consequence of not getting some drastically altered attack, I felt it was necessary to give him more than just simply a damage boost, because even Nano gets the heal and the damage resistance. So for Mikhail, that comes in the form of his displacement getting upgraded during his ultimate, and now it will activate once per second instead of once every 10 seconds. But once more, going back to what I talked about during the passive, how effective it is depends on who you're going against. If it's against a Reinhardt, a Junkrat, or a McCree, then it's going to be fairly effective to dodge one of their attacks every second. But against characters with a high attack speed like Tracer, Sombra, Diva, or Hammond, then it's not going to be all that effective because you're only going to displace and avoid maybe 5 or 10 damage at most per. And also keep in mind that when you use your ultimate, most of the enemy team is going to be focused on you and trying to get rid of you, so you're going to be attacked from more than just one source. So I felt he needed a little something more for defense. But keep in mind, even with that, he is still very much a glass cannon during this ultimate, and that's where the high skill requirement comes into play. That was a lot of stuff. I felt I had to do a little more in-depth explanation for some of his abilities, because when you look and you see a cooldown is shorter than the duration, that's gonna raise some questions. But also the ultimate, when people look at it and they're just, oh, it's a 60% damage increase for 8 seconds, that's like crazy powerful. But when you compare that to other ultimates where you simply press one button, you press Q, and suddenly you do 2,000 damage, versus Mikhail where you press the button and then you have to control him and aim and do all the things yourself. Like, the more you have to do yourself, the longer the duration can be. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys have questions, so leave them in the comment section below. I'm going to grab a bunch of them and make a follow-up video. In addition to answering your questions, I'm also going to show you a bunch of the cool behind-the-scenes artwork and the creation, the process of making the character, which I know a lot of you guys like. So if you're watching this video and it's not the day of release, check the description and you can go and watch the follow-up. Also, the artist X-SEIDE-T did an incredible job. Make sure to let him know. His link is down in the description. And lastly, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button and don't forget to share it. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.